I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to this Half Hollow Hills Community Informational Meeting. I'm Gail Jasper, a decades-long resident of Dix Hills. I'm also the person that's been filling your email inbox with neighborhood alerts and reminders about this meeting and other things that are happening in the neighborhood. Our speakers tonight will help to spread light on the Melville Town Center Overlay District and the impact it will have on our school district, its budget, our student population, and our taxes. I hope you've all been taking cards that you can put your questions on. Please don't interrupt our speakers. Hold them for the Q&A, which we have allowed a lot of time for to accommodate all our questions. You'll have an opportunity to ask them. So if you don't have a card yet, there will be folks handing out cards and golf pencils for that purpose. Please put your contact info on the card so we can follow up if it isn't answered here. We have a time constraint in the library. They start kicking us out about 8:35, 8:40. This evening, our first speaker is Ms. Brooke Lupinacci, Town of Huntington Councilwoman. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that participating here tonight. Thank you, Ms. Jaspa and HARC, for accommodating my schedule in speaking first this evening. I do have another commitment and I will have to go after my remarks, but any cards that are collected for questions directed to me will be ultimately given to me, and I will absolutely get back to you. In case you don't know, I am one of your elected officials in the town of Huntington. I sit on the Huntington Town Board in capacity as a councilwoman. By way of background, in March of 2024, the town of Huntington proposed a pair of resolutions, this was initially, to create a Melville Town Center overlay that encompassed 183 acres in Melville and an outer ring overlay of that encompassed 549 acres, known as an outer ring. Along with existing uses, the resolutions as originally proposed would allow for special use permits for mixed use residential. The area was currently zoned as I-1, primarily consisting of commercial offices with some warehousing, light manufacturing, and recreation. Ultimately, there were several iterations and revisions of the resolution, and then, on December 12th of 2024, the town board voted to adopt local law number 56, 2004, creating the Melville Town Center Overlay District, also known as the MCOD. This, as I stated previously, encompasses approximately 183 acres, 22 parcels. The legislation purportedly caps the residential units at 1,500. However, it's my position that that cap is artificial because there is no cap for condos and co-ops. Development to the front four thoroughfares, which is shown in orange, and there is written into the legislation a pause after receiving submissions for 400 units. The outer ring portion that I mentioned earlier was tabled for the time being. What I'll have you know is I am the only vote in opposition to this entire plan, without a plan, as I call it. I voted no from the very beginning, and I maintain that position throughout, including and up to the December 12th vote. And I'm here to speak to you today about my no vote for what the town, as I said, refers to as the Melville Town Center Overlay District. I don't call it that because there is no plan or requirement to build a walkable downtown. Retail is dying up and down the Route 110 corridor and throughout Long Island. What developer wants to lose money to retail space? As I see it, the zone change was really created to convert our Melville Light Industrial Zone to instead permit high-density, 4-story apartments. Therefore, I think it should be better named as the Melville Apartment Overlay Zone. In my comments in March 27th of last year, 2024, I made it clear that I was open to looking at doing a project in Melville if there was an actual plan and that the town to perform the required impact studies. My full remarks at that time are available for your viewing on the town website. After the remarks I made in March, the legislation was revised, as I stated, several more times, and I would argue that all the revisions in itself is proof positive that this is the plan without a plan, a Frankenstein in the making. As I stand here today, there still is no plan, nor have the required impact studies required by law under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, more commonly known as SECRA, been conducted. I'd like to take a deeper dive into the lack of studies. To me, there's no way that the Half Hollow Hills School District, nor the Melville Fire Department or the Suffolk County Department of Health can plan for what is claimed to be 1,500 apartments with no objective outside professional studies. Basic SECRA requires the town to take what is called a, quote, hard look at the impacts of the action being the Melville apartment overlay. The town did not. Another basic SECRA principle is if a single potential adverse impact exists, it requires the town to prepare what is known as an EIS, Environmental Impact Statement. There are probably dozens of potential adverse impacts associated with changing the Melville zoning to build these apartments, but there are 3 at the moment that I'd like to point out in particular. First is the sewage treatment plant. We know from the current supervisor's comments at the April 30th public hearing that was held at the West Hollow Middle School, there was over 750 people in attendance, that there is a potential adverse impact with not enough capacity at the Bergen Point sewage treatment plant to process the waste of the tenants living in the 1,500 apartments. The current supervisor stated on the record that there is only capacity to process waste for 320 additional residential units. Therefore, SECRA requires the town to coordinate with the Suffolk County Department of Health to analyze the potential adverse impact and to come up with a plan to mitigate. No studies were performed. Secondly is the issue of the groundwater. Numerous speakers at the 5 public hearings that were held on April, May, June, September, and November of last year brought up over and over again their concerns about the impact on our sole source aquifer. Residents asked if the thousands of new tenants drawing water out could lower the water table and possibly impact the flow of the Bethpage plume just to the west. I don't know the answer to that, folks, and neither does anyone else because it hasn't been studied. As I've maintained all along, it needs to be. The Half Hollow Hills School District. Potential adverse negative impact. The school district, to their credit, sent the town a very well-articulated and thorough letter dated June 11th of 2024, questioning the town as to why the typical EIS study, environmental impact studies, hadn't been prepared, which are usually done for even smaller projects. The school district outlined a number of concerns, including how the town's director of planning, who prepared the required basic SECRA form, derived the projected additional number of students at 273. Whereas the school district, using actual Half Hollow Hill numbers, project the impact to be 640 students. That's a big difference that deserves to be analyzed. I maintain, as I did now for over a year, that an outside, independent, objective impact study should have been performed by outside consultants. One of the most concerning assertions in the June 11th letter issued by the school district was a conclusion that the town's approval of this apartment overlay district would cost the taxpayers $20.5 million annually and would possibly force the Half Hollow Hills School District to get approval from 60% of its residents to pierce the tax cap, all of which would adversely impact the school district and by extension, potentially home values. In fairness, when the town board approved the final version in December, and this was after the June 11th meeting, the cap was lowered to 1,500 apartments, so the impact might only be 10 million annually. It's still probably enough to force the district to pierce the tax cap. I'm sure you will hear, or I've heard from my colleagues, that just because this passed, they don't have to actually approve anything. But as I had stated a year ago in my March 27th comments, which is a year to the day tomorrow, I maintain that's false. Now that the resolution has passed and the rights have been granted to the private property owners, I would say that now, so long as they meet the specifications rather, that are outlined in the legislation, which I'll note are extremely broad, my colleagues can try to tell them no, but the private owners now have standing to sue and get court approval to build their apartments. I informed on the record, and they refused to listen. And at times I was even mocked. And now the community is going to pay the price for not listening. For over a year, I've been fighting for the Half Hollow Hills School District and the Melville community. And I appreciate that this is likely concerning to all of you as it has been to me. You have a school district to be proud of, a community that is beautiful that you call home. And in recognition of that, and as a person who's lived in this town my whole life, a fourth generation at that, I have been fighting all along for all of you and doing so alone. I'll conclude by pledging to all of you that I will continue to fight for the community and keep the promises that I made when I sought this office. And I would just like to again thank all of you for coming here. I think it's important for your community involvement. And I like to thank HARC for organizing events such as this and the others that you do throughout the year to keep the community informed. At the end of the day, you get the government that you vote for. So thank you.
In case you haven't kept up with the statistics, our school district is first in Suffolk County, fifth in New York State, and out of 11,000 school districts nationwide, we are number 14. Some members of our school board are here tonight, and I'd like to personally say thank you. Our next speaker is Daniel Bryant, a relatively new resident, perhaps only 6 years old, but he's an incredible researcher. And he is now going to take the podium and he'll give you some of the research that he found.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Bryant. Here's some pictures. My beautiful wife of 20 years and I have 4 amazing children, 3 of which are enrolled in the Half Hollow Hills School District. I live and work in Melville, and I'm a West Point graduate and an Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran. My youngest son, thank you. My youngest son has Down syndrome, and I feel very blessed to live not only in the top-ranked school district for typical children, but also within one with a stellar reputation for educating children with special needs. I've taken a keen interest in the Melville Town Center, given all the potential positive and negative effects it could have on my family. Huntington Now has published 2 of my heavily researched open letters to the town board outlining the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Melville Town Center. I've spoken with many individuals, experts on all sides of the issue. I've been asked by Gail to present with some of the potential impacts on the Half Hollow Hills School District. I'm going to try to stick to the facts, but any opinions I express are my own. I'll start by saying I initially liked the idea of a vibrant, walkable town center similar to Huntington. However, as I researched and observed the process, I became increasingly skeptical. If we take a step back, 1,500 new units would increase the households in Melville by 20% and be the largest multifamily housing project in Suffolk County history. That's a fundamental change to our community. I understand Long Island's need for additional multifamily housing, but I don't understand why all of it must be clustered in a handful of properties in Melville. I also discovered the resolution allows for high-density residential twice as dense as that found in Huntington Village. And one of the most important issues is the potential impact on the Half Hollow Hills School District and its students and residents. Now, as was already stated, and hopefully you guys have seen, on June 11th, the school board sent a thoughtful letter to the town board raising a number of concerns about the potential impacts on Melville Town Center. Gail may have some copies of those letters for anyone that would like to see them, and I think they're also available online. They did note many details remain elusive. The town has never provided an actual plan or concept of the Melville Town Center. They expressed concern that the projected student enrollment increases could put strain on our school systems and current residents. I'll take you through those numbers later in the presentation. The district said the development would likely require the reopening of an elementary school that presently serves children with disabilities. This would require the disruptive task of redistributing children across schools. They also noted that pilots or other accommodations could shift the tax burden to existing residents. A pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes, and it's a form of tax abatement, typically granted to large development projects, which can benefit developers at the expense of local residents. And I think we're going to hear some more about that by the next speaker. They did provide data showing that actual students per rental unit in the district are over twice as high as the town has estimated. I'll take you through the data and implications on the next slide. Finally, they ended their letter to the town board by saying, "We welcome further discussion and appreciate your consideration of our concerns." The town's board's response to these thoughtful concerns and invitation for collaboration was to completely ignore the school district for over 6 months until after the resolution passed in December. Only Councilwoman Lupinacci followed up with the district. Now, on the chart you're looking at is based on data provided in the district's letter. You can see in the first 2 columns, the district provided the town with actual results for 5 multifamily properties in the district near Melville Town Center. The district also included statistics for 2 other surrounding multifamily developments nearby, but outside the district. In the 3rd column, you can see I calculated implied students per 100 units, which is a common industry metric. And in the 4th and 5th column, I calculated the implied number of new students for 1,500 new units and 3,000 new units based on the Melville Town Center scope. Now, on the last row, you can see the industry standard. The industry standard is a statistic the town supervisor commonly references and apparently refers to a 2019 Stony Brook white paper. The statistic is an average of 15 multifamily properties across Long Island. Notably, none of these properties are located in Melville. Only one of these properties is even located in Huntington, and it had 18 students per 100 units, twice the study average. From my view, the town relying on the average is like saying the average home price in Long Island is $700,000, so I should expect to pay $700,000 for a home in Lloyd Harbor. As an aside, while I was reading this Stony Brook white paper, I discovered the authors had included senior living properties in their average, which significantly skewed the results. On the next slide, I laid out some of this data in 2 charts. On the left-hand chart, we can observe a clear delineation between average students from Melville and the surrounding district. The green bar is Melville at 25 students per 100, and the orange bar is the surrounding properties at 14. You can see both of those are significantly higher than the study industry average that the town is relying on. Now on the right, I've laid out how many new students would be implied by the 1,500 new units based on the data provided by the letter. First, you can see students per unit in all of these properties in Melville area significantly exceed the so-called industry standard in the blue bar, which only implies 136 new students for 1,500 units. Obviously, industry standards do not apply to our school district. Second, I'd like folks to observe the significant variation between properties. Some properties have 2 or 3 times the number of students per unit as other properties. Given this large variation, I don't think it is responsible to just apply an average for planning purposes. For 1,500 new units, we could expect anywhere between 200 new students to up to 750 new students. I'd like to also say I've read several studies that the town has relied on. One is a 2018 study performed by Rutgers on a wide range of New Jersey multifamily properties. The study looked at a number of factors, including 2 factors the town has completely ignored. First, being located in a highly desirable school district tended to increase the number of students per unit, in some case, doubling the rate. You can actually see the results right in the data that the town provided if you look at the chart on the left and see the difference between the surrounding districts and the Melville district. Second, for properties like this, being further away from a train station significantly increased the amount of school-age children at a property. This makes some sense, as folks are less likely to want to raise school children next to a train station. And I think this skews data even more because a lot of the multifamily that is used as reference on Long Island is actually built around train stations. But the Melville Town Center obviously is not near a train station or a hub. What I'd like to leave you with is this thought on this slide. After examining all the data and reading all the studies, I think the town board should be very, very conservative in estimating how many new students the Melville Town Center might bring. Cherry-picked averages are not appropriate. Now I'd like to talk about the financial impact on the Half Hollow Hills School District. This is what Brooke alluded to a bit before. The town's letter actually was based on 3,000 units and estimated over a $20 million impact on student expenditures. And this was based on New York State per pupil data that's publicly published. I think that might even be a bit conservative because it's an average data and doesn't take into account that we're in a very high cost of living area. And so our per pupil could be significantly higher. We've extrapolated this number based on the 1,500 units in the approved plan, but it would still be over $10 million. On top of the additional student expenditures, the district has said they will likely need to reopen Chestnut Hill and Forest Park. As some of you lived through the shutdown of these schools can attest, redistributing students across schools can be traumatic and not conducive to student learning or well-being. Additionally, the district is currently collecting revenue from renting out these facilities, which will be another impact on its budget. Now, I will say the school district made this projection about reopening schools when the number of units was capped at 3,000. Does reducing the cap to 1,500 reduce the chances the district will need to reopen the schools? We don't know because the town never bothered to discuss it with the district. Now, how does a school district deal with these new expenditures and loss of revenue? It really only has 2 options. 1, reduce services to students, or 2, pierce the cap by passing the increased cost on to residents. I will say a budget which pierces the cap takes a supermajority vote from the district residents to approve. Half Hollow Hill has actually been a very good steward and has never pierced the cap in its history. But I understand it can be a very disruptive product that distracts the district from providing the best educational services possible. Now, some may have heard the increased taxes from new developments will offset the new student expenditures. From the studies I've read, it is not a foregone conclusion that increased property taxes will offset increased student expenditures. In the majority of developments in one study, and a sizable minority in another study of developments across New York, multifamily developments are a net negative in terms of new property tax revenue versus new student expenditures. We are particularly at risk here if the town is materially underestimating the number of new students. Now, I'd like to share some statistics about the Half Hollow Hills budget. The 24-25 budget is $299 million. Of that budget, $230 million comes from the property tax levy. Of that $230 million, less than 2% comes from the 22 properties within the Melville Town Center. Now contrast that with a $10 million potential impact on student expenditures. We're potentially creating a $10 million problem to solve a $4.5 million potential risk. Also note that this 4.5 million coming from these 22 properties is up 15% from last year. So the taxes coming from this area are actually going up and not down. If you'll bear with me a little longer, I'd like to further explain the property tax levy. New York State is a bit quirky. Your school taxes are not based on the absolute value of your home. Your school taxes are instead based on the relative value of your home compared to all the other properties in the district. That's why the levy may go up 2%, but your school taxes may go up 5%. The district's total property tax levy is based on a complex formula controlled by the state, but generally it is averaged about 2% from the previous year's tax levy. The property tax levy is not directly tied to the number of students in the district. The tax levy will be the same whether 1,000 new students enter the district or 1,000 students leave the district. If new development is built in the district and is assessed at a high tax rate, it may reduce the school taxes of other properties in the district, but it will not automatically result in the school itself receiving more property taxes. Now I'll finish this up, and thanks for bearing with me the whole time, by giving you a little bit of personal perspective. I personally feel by the district not answering the town board's letter, publicly, or as I understand it, privately, the town board not answering the district's letter, publicly, or as I understand it, privately, it showed an indifference to the impact of to the district, to the students, and the residents. I feel like the town board is treating the Half Hollow Hills School District like a public utility. The town board will make the zoning decisions, and the district will have to deal with the consequences. And I'm confident the district will find a way to deal with the consequences, whatever those may be. But I'd like to say that our district is not a commodity. Our district is special. Our district is the crown jewel of our community. Our district is the top-ranked district in Suffolk County. Our district is ranked within the top 20 school districts in the entire country. Think about that. Our district is ranked within the top 20, or our district provides an outstanding and compassionate education to over 1,600 students with special needs, like my son Noah. Our district is worth defending. I believe the town board should be very, very, very cautious about how any decisions they make might negatively impact what our community has worked so hard to create. And the town board should start working in close collaboration with the district to ensure this. Thank you, and thank you, Gail, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Daniel. Before we go on to our next speaker, if you have questions, you should have index cards. Raise your hand if you need them, and raise your hand when they're ready, and there will be people to pick them up, so we will have the questions ready for the Q&A. And we will have these slides on the HARC website. There's a lot of data here, so we'll have them out there if you want to look at this further.
Also, on the way out, we have copies of the 2.5-page letter written by the school district in June of 2024, and that's yours to take home and peruse. And if you want to watch this again, it is being recorded. We'll send that out as to how you can see it again. This is an informational meeting to advise all of our residents as to what is happening with the Melville overlay. Daniel, I'd like to thank you very, very much. That was an incredible presentation. I don't think anyone's eyes crossed. Our next speaker is Ron Deutsch. He is from an organization called Reinvent Albany, which advocates for transparent and accountable New York government. Ron comes to us via Zoom. I hope this works.
So Ryan, if you could unmute yourself. Thank you.
You got it.
Tell me, sorry for the technical potential. Just let me know if I'm not aligned with you on the slides.
Okay. Well, thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I appreciate all the work that HARC is doing. I've had the privilege of getting to know a couple of the folks in the group, and I'm really impressed with the work that you're doing. So I just want to talk a little bit about the ABCs of IDAs, and you can go right to the next slide. So I only have a few minutes here, so I want to try and relay as much information as possible. Not everybody knows what industrial development agencies are, IDAs, as they're commonly called, but they were created back in 1969 to allow local governments to basically try and draw business to their communities. They were designed to bring in industry and manufacturing at a time when industry and manufacturing was fleeing New York. There's about 107 of these industrial development agencies across the state. About 56 of them are county-based, and 51 of them are city and town-based. So what do these IDAs do? They basically provide a variety of different tax incentives for businesses to locate in a specific area or community. Daniel very ably talked about what pilots are, payment in lieu of taxes. So what happens is an IDA will offer a payment in lieu of taxes or a reduction, let's say, in school taxes or property taxes for a period of anywhere from 10 to 30 years in some instances. So the sad reality is that schools are the biggest loser here because generally what happens is they will create a schedule where, let's say, a company moving into an area will pay 10% of its property taxes for a period of a number of years, then bump up to 20%, then maybe get to 30%. You know how it goes. So that's basically what an IDA is and does. The next slide talks a little bit about what these boards are and who's on them. So each IDA board actually consists of anywhere between 3 and 7 members appointed by the mayors or county executives, city councils, the actual elected individuals in communities. Even though these boards are obviously unelected, they are appointed. And schools being the biggest loser here because, you know, IDAs are doling out abatements for school taxes. They don't really get a seat at the table, nor do they get a say in whether or not these dollars should be abated for specific companies. And it's really only in very rare instances where IDAs seek approval from school boards. And even when they do and a school board says no, they tend to move forward with these projects anyway. There's also no requirement for having educational representatives on these IDA boards, despite the fact that they're giving away school district funds. Next slide talks about what we think is the real big problem here, right? We've done a lot of research, in particular, Good Jobs First, which is a national organization, has done significant research looking at how much school districts are losing to these pilots and abatements that the IDAs are providing. And other new research has shown that these IDAs have a very perverse incentives to give away local tax revenue in order to garner bigger fees, which they charge per transaction. Next slide talks about the losses to school districts. So Good Jobs First estimated about $1.8 billion in lost school tax revenue through abatements in 2021 alone. So this combines about 430 million in what are self-reported losses. So school districts are now required, as a result of a Government Accountability Standards Board new rule that requires them to show the estimated losses to pilot payments or education-specific tax abatements. And obviously, schools are harmed by this because they're not getting the tax revenue that they need in order to operate. And we're finding that as we look across the board, schools with higher concentrations of children of color, or students of color are among those losing the most revenue per student. The next slide talks about how there are 37 public school districts in New York that lost $1,000 per student, and 7 of those lost $5,000 per student. So these impacts are very significant financially, and are definitely harming schools across New York State. The next slide, I want to talk a little bit about stopping IDAs from abating school taxes, right? So Senator Ryan and Assemblymember Bronson have introduced legislation that would prevent IDAs from abating school taxes. And that's period. They can't do it. It's the shortest piece of legislation I've ever read in my life. It's like 5 sentences. But what we see now is school districts across the state have really been fighting with their local IDA boards as they continue to give away school district revenue, when, you know, a lot of the federal funding that came to pass during the pandemic has been drying up. So school districts are really going to be struggling soon. We also see a lot of IDA board members who are pushing back as well. And resigning in protest. But when we look across the state right now, you have major public employee unions like the New York State AFL-CIO, the Teachers Union, CSEA. You also have school organizations like the New York State Council of School Superintendents, New York State PTA, New York State School Boards Association. The Riverhead School District has been incredibly active at the state level in pushing back against this. And you also have faith groups, research organizations, and others. Everybody's pretty united on this notion that we need to stop abating school taxes and letting IDAs do that. The next slide talks about the fact that, you know, we are extremely dependent in New York State on property taxes. In fact, New York schools get about 50% of their revenue from property taxes, which is in fact twice the national average. Half Hollow Hills, almost 80% of the school budget comes from local property taxes. So as you can imagine, any reductions in the revenues collected as a result of abatements or pilots result in harm to the school district. And when you look nationally, you realize that public schools get on average about half of their revenue from the state, whereas New York kind of flips that script and is very over-reliant on property taxes to fund our schools. Next slide, we talk about New York's flawed tax cap, right? So Daniel did an amazing job of talking about the tax cap itself. It is, without a doubt, a massively convoluted formula that was created in 2011 as a way to kind of artificially bring local property taxes not down, but control them, as it were. But, you know, the sad reality is this is an arbitrary tax cap, and it's really had kind of a negative impact on school districts. But to add insult to injury, what's been happening is the way payments in lieu of taxes are calculated within the tax cap, and the fact that the new properties are not being included in what's called the tax base growth factor. It's basically creating a situation where we have negative tax caps, where some schools like in Niagara County have a 6% negative tax cap. So they have to cut spending to remain under the tax cap. And again, unless they're willing to pierce that tax cap, which requires a 60% supermajority of voters to do that. So again, I feel like the tax cap itself is undemocratic because it gives power to a smaller number of people in the community than the majority. And oftentimes what we see is when these subsidy deals actually expire after 10 or 20 years, oftentimes these businesses end up, you know, trying to fight their assessments at the local level to, in fact, lower their effective tax rates even further. So, you know, these are all problems that are solvable. At the state level, we are really recommending that we don't allow IDAs to abate school property taxes any longer. and that we rewrite the tax cap formula to include the subsidized real estate projects in the value of the overall tax base, again, or that tax base growth factor to prevent negative tax caps from occurring. And we also want to make sure that companies aren't just allowed to, continue to fight their assessments after their pilot agreement has reached an end. That they should in fact be paying the full amount of taxes that they are required to pay, because when they don't do that, it hurts the school district. It also hurts the other residents who are quite frankly picking up the tab for some of these businesses. And, IDAs, I think, were initially formed with good intentions, but we've really run amok, I would say. And now instead of industry and manufacturing, they're catering to real estate developers for a variety of different market-based housing projects. We would suggest that those housing projects are not within the purview of what IDAs are supposed to be doing and actually constitutionally prohibited. We're doing a paper on that right now. But the long and short of it is here, we really need to rein in what's going on with IDAs. And we just need, like other states have done, not allow economic development projects to be subsidized with school tax revenues. So look forward to working with all of you more as we move forward with state legislation, and that's going to be a real focus as our state finishes its budget ostensibly by April 1st, which is the deadline, but I don't think they're going to meet that. But in April, we are going to make a concerted push to reform IDAs with our friends in the school and educational sphere. So thank you very much.